Hi there, it's Nicole here for Simon Says Stamp, and today's card features the June 2017 card kit Blissful, and I've used all components from the card kit, pattern paper, the watercolor cardstock, and added in just a couple of extra things, some additional distress ink for watercoloring, the scallop stitches die to add some accent there to the watercolor strip, and then some Nouveau crystal drops. But otherwise, the components, including the envelope, are all from the card kit. This is a gorgeous card kit, perfect for creating some really pretty cards for maybe weddings and things like that. I think it would be great for anyone who loves florals. Just switch out the greetings. The Floral Bliss stamp set included in the kit is so super pretty. I trimmed down the 8.5 by 11 watercolor distress cardstock from the kit, and I'm going to stamp the large floral from that Floral Bliss stamp set along the bottom edge of this panel. I purposely kept my watercolor cardstock slightly bigger than what I actually need so that I'd have a little room to play and to trim this down. I'm using the Misty to stamp it simply because the watercolor cardstock has a little bit of texture, and if it doesn't stamp all the way and I don't get good coverage, it's very easy to put your paper back inside there and add a little bit more ink if you need to. I sprinkled on a little of the Fine Detail Simon Says Stamp white embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat set this. When I hold it at an angle, you can see the beautiful design here. I'm going to heat set all that white embossing powder, and I need to make sure that all of the embossing powder gets melted really well. One of my favorite things to do with florals especially is to stamp them with Versamark, emboss with white, and then watercolor with some medium or another. The Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide ink is included in the kit, and so I'm going to create a little paint palette here on an acrylic block with that, and then several of the distress inks that I already own. So I've got Tattered Rose, Festive Berries, Peeled Paint, and Shabby Shutters along with that Worn Lipstick, and they blend together just fine, even though one is the Distress Oxide and the rest are just traditional distress inks. I am using the water brush pen to pick up those colors from my little paint palette here and start watercoloring the image. I know it's a little hard to see since it's white on white here, but it's so beautiful once the embossed resist starts kind of taking place and more of the image gets watercolored. I absolutely love it. There's no harsh dark outline or anything like that. It's so beautiful. I'm laying down the Worn Lipstick for these larger flowers and blending in just a little bit of the Festive Berries here and there. The beauty of watercolor is the imperfection of it, I think. The large leaves are a combination of Shabby Shutters and Peeled Paint. For some of the other leaves, I'm going to go with just Peeled Paint and water it down and kind of layer that same color one on top of another. Then I'm just kind of using the other three colors, the pinks and red, in different combinations throughout the design. And I'm sorry, my head is in the way, I see here. I had to get kind of close. Like I was saying, it's so hard to see white on white, especially these small little areas like these little flowers. But I'm going to just mix those three colors in different combinations, or maybe just use a single color to add all of that to my card design. And I'm trying to make sure I got all those little flowers. They are so super teeny tiny. Then I'm going to lay down some Tattered Rose and Festive Berries for a couple of my other flowers. And you just really start seeing this gorgeous design kind of all take shape and come together. This is one of my favorite ways to watercolor, is with my distress inks. They are so super versatile. There are lots and lots of ways to use them, and being able to watercolor with them makes it a really affordable option. If you like the look of watercolor and want to try it out but don't want to commit to a more expensive kind of watercolor, this is a great way to try out the technique and see if it's something for you. I'll continue to color these until I get everything all colored. Acrylic blocks make fantastic palettes simply because it's very easy to pick up the ink. It's not going to absorb into like a paper plate or something like that. And then they are very easy to wipe down and wipe off when you're finished using them. I simply just wiped it off, and then anything that didn't come clean, I used just a little bit of ultra cleaner and just wiped down my block when I was finished to get it completely clean. Go ahead and finish just a few more of these leaves on each side. There's quite a bit down below still as well. I like to kind of start in one area and work my way out. It helps to not miss anything that way. Sometimes with this white on white, it can be really easy to miss certain parts of the card or the coloring just because it's really hard to see until you get that color on. In fact, there was a little bit more greenery up here that I missed. So I went back and added a little bit here. And even after I trim this down and add my pattern paper strips and everything, I noticed I missed another little flower kind of peeking out behind a leaf. And so I went in and filled it in after I had put the entire card together on my card base. Those little hanging flowers down here, I'm going to use some tattered rose distress ink, and we'll layer on a little bit of worn lipstick over that, just kind of touching it to the paper, picking up the color, touching it to the paper, and then letting that water and the ink do what it wants in that little design. The embossed areas give it a little bit of a well, and that makes watercoloring really forgiving. It's not going to migrate outside of that embossed line unless you add too much water. So I think it's a great way to kind of play with watercolor and learn kind of as you go there. This is one of the Echo Park Wedding Bliss pattern papers. And I'm going to put it in the Misty and stamp the word congratulations from that Floral Bliss stamp set along the top. I want a thin strip of this, but I wanted to make sure I got the sentiment stamped straight and also dark enough, so I stamped it one on top of another there. And then I can go ahead and start cutting all of my paper into strips. So I want a little strip of this, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it a little thicker, or a little wider, I guess I want to say, than I actually need to give myself enough room to play with it. I'll also cut a couple of strips from the text pattern paper. I want the text to be above and below these two pieces, but I didn't want to waste a bunch of this awesome text paper back behind. So I didn't use the whole sheet and then layer these two strips on top. Instead, I'm just going to cut two thin strips. I still have lots of this text paper left to use for another project. On my card base, I'm going to take some adhesive and completely cover it. I find that this is kind of a little bit easier than trying to put adhesive on the strips and put it all together. So I cover my card base, and then I'm going to start from the top and the bottom with my text paper and lay that down. So there's the first piece. And before I got too far into this, I realized I thought that this floral watercolored panel would look great with a decorative edge. I wanted some sort of a stitching design, and there are these awesome scallop stitches dies from Simon Says Stamp that I'm going to use along both edges. I'm using the smallest from this set. There's 3 different sizes, and it has scallops but it has this stitching, and it adds just a really nice finished edge to all kinds of strips. I love it for borders like this, and I'm going to do it on both the top and the bottom of my strip. And you can see I'm left with some great stitching detail here. So now I will go ahead and add that other text paper at the top, go in with my floral die cut border, and before I press too much down at the top, I'm going to put some adhesive on my last strip, center that right above that floral secure that to my card base. It's okay that all this stuff is hanging off the edge. I can go in with my scissors and clean it up. That way it gives me plenty of room to play with to make sure everything is centered. Just gonna flip it over, trim off both sides here. Need to go back and do this one. Make sure it's nice and even. There's just a little bit more hanging over the edge. And there is the front of my card. It is beautiful as is right here, but I decided to go in with some Nouveau crystal drops in ivory, seashell, and bottle green and create some fun little enamel dot accents. These are fantastic for creating your own accents to your cards. I also thought it would be great to stamp a sentiment on the inside of the card as well. It's going to read, "For the happy couple." It's a great way to finish off the inside of the card. And I'm going to create these Nouveau crystal drops in varying sizes. One thing to keep in mind when you're using Nouveau crystal drops is that they take about 24 hours to harden completely. You can handle them after an hour or so, probably, I'd say a couple hours, but they are not going to be completely hardened for 24 hours. So if you're going to send this through the mail or something like that, or try to put it in an envelope, I would definitely make sure you wait a day before you do that. These add just a really beautiful, nice finishing touch to any card
Once
design.
I am finished with this, my card is all finished. I've used the metallic ivory envelope also included in the kit to go along with this beautiful wedding card. Thanks for joining me today for this video showcasing the components from the June 2017 Simon Says Stamp card kit. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.